Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Don't fancy a 10K?
Yeah, maybe, but you need to have more time to train for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
That's
I mean,
my style, just not to sprint.
yeah, it's more your style to sprint. Yeah.
No, no.
Oh, it's not your style to sprint. No, no. Yeah. It's amazing what you can get brackets away with, inverted commas away with. I won the Manhattan Island Marathon swim in 2013, so it's a 48k swim. I was averaging 36k's a week in my training lead up to that, which still sounds like quite a lot of training, but it actually works out to just under 10 hours of training per week. So with a busy family, young family, busy work, etc., 10 hours of training per week is not excessive. The guy who finished second was doing 126 kilometres per week. He was a professional swimmer over from Sydney. So sometimes you think to yourself, I've got to be doing, to make it worthwhile, I've got to be doing lots and lots and lots. But if you train smartly, on 10 hours a week, that's all I have time for. But so long as you're doing the right stuff, you can. So yeah, I can see you doing a good 10k down the line. Okay, so let's go, Sophie. Now, Sophie, with yourself, about 130, 132 per 100 metres. Don't know how that normally compares with the sort of. It is. All right, perfect, good. So you're highly tuned into that. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good thing. What's really interesting about your stroke is, from one perspective. See if I've got it from the side here again. No, we'll look at it from the. Here we go. Watch. This is smooth. The classic smooth. Well, the classic smooth high elbow on the left. Swinger on the other side. So it's like we've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde here, sort of thing. So classic high elbow on one side. Potentially, this is how you were taught to swim, or no, not sure. Right. Yeah. Sure. So one of the first things I'd look at doing is maybe trying to balance this out a little bit. It's gone there. Well, both sides have got. What I was actually going to, the correction point I was going to mention is that this left arm that comes into the water, it's a little bit thumb first here though. So just be a little bit, how you said you started breaking down with injuries and all this sort of stuff. On that side, okay. So it could be partly to do with what we see here on that left arm though. You do correct it by the time the hand goes into the water, but it's even in that position over the top, even though you're not applying any force to it on a repetitive basis. Plus the fact that left arm, when it's coming up like this, if you are a bit tense and rigid in the shoulders, you can actually be working against that. So my recommendation on your left side would be to open things out a little bit at the angle, lift the hand up a little bit higher. But conversely, on the right side, watch how this right arm comes up and over, look. That right elbow slaps into the water before the hand does. So I actually reckon your right arm would benefit from a little bit more of what the left arm's doing, and the left arm would benefit a little bit more of what the right arm's doing. You need to find that halfway house between the two. The best way for you to find that, I believe, would be with the broken arrow drill, which is exactly why we created it. So your right arm does that, but then maintains that all the way through and comes down and almost slaps into the water a little bit. The broken arrow gets you to do the same thing, but then try to get that nice clean hand entry. On your left side, by bringing it up, it'll get you to open out the shoulder a little bit. Try to keep the palm of the hand facing away from anybody walking on the side of the pool, and then piercing into the water there. I think that'd be. Have you ever done that drill before?
No, I've done the sort of more like with the flippers, doing the
side kick up, yeah,
a lot.
yeah. This broken arrow drill, yeah. So we could almost rename this the Sophie drill. This is the drill that I'd like to do on a repetitive basis to try to get that balance right between the two. So you should feel like you're the direct consequence is you should feel like you're opening up the left shoulder a little bit, and you should feel like you're more cleanly, more positively entering into the water with the right arm. Again, head position is very good when you go to take a breath. If we look at you underneath the water, left arm comes into water pretty well. I'd like to see you taking the watch off. Again, are you hooked on it? Are you?
I just download it after a session. I'm not hooked within the session.
Sure. Yes, yeah. It's nice to be able to download it and upload it to Training Peaks and all those sort of things. But sometimes it can compromise the way and pulling through underneath the water. If you're using a tempo trainer, what I do is I don't use a watch, I use a tempo trainer. I simply go home, did I meet all my targets? Yes, no. If it's a yes, next week I make it a little bit quicker, and then I just chart that progress over time. So it's quite good. But on this right hand side, look, yeah, like we saw with Claudia just a moment ago, look, the right elbow just drops a little bit lower, and we end up getting in that position where it's much more of a push down with this right arm, and then eventually bending the elbow and pressing the water back behind you. So for your stroke, even though a lot of coaches say it's not what happens above the water, it's what happens underneath the water that really counts. I think with yourself, working on what's happening above the water would actually help. It'd help that left shoulder, take some pressure off that left shoulder. If you open out the angle at the elbow, bring it more up and over, and then piercing into the water from a slightly higher position. But equally on the right side, I do like what you're doing with that straight arm recovery, especially for really rough water, but it needs to come into the water a little bit more prominently. Yeah. It needs not to be like a big overreach for the elbow to strike the water at the same time as the hand. From the front, looking at you coming along here, like right arm. Interesting enough, this right arm sweeps a little bit underneath the body. You see how that hand is there. It's not massively off where it needs to be, but if we draw on some reference points, draw a plumb line straight down through the shoulder, and then bring Rebecca Adlington in. See how her hand stays a little bit more directly underneath the shoulder, as opposed to sweeping across underneath the body. Now, if we want to get really pedantic about this, we could say, well, your camera angle is not as square on this as it was on the previous one, but that's because when you're swimming down here, you're actually swimming on the black line, or actually just over towards the other side of the lane. So when you're filming your swimmers and you're instructing them, stay on that side or come on this side, really be quite pedantic about it. If you've got time, of course, then you could refilm. So what I'm identifying as a bit of a sweep there is probably, in reality, is probably less than what we're truly seeing. But if you can think about keeping your right hand directly underneath that right shoulder, and think about your right elbow being out just a smidgen wider, then that'd be a useful thing. Exhalation is also a little bit haphazard. So the left one, no, the left one's actually fine. It's actually directly underneath the shoulder there as you're going through. The exhalation is a bit sporadic. Sometimes you're blowing out, sometimes you're holding on to your breath. You see that? Look, not so much. You've got the same puffed out cheeks. Whoops, that we saw. So cheeks up, holding on to the breath there just a little bit. So potentially that's going to be lifting you up at the front, sinking down at the back, also making you a little bit more anaerobic than what you should actually truly be. And this is the reason why I believe that you probably. Do you feel like you kick quite a bit, or?
Yeah, I'm sure historically I was really massive.
Massive, kicktastic, yeah.
So then I read a lot.
I think you've toned it down. I've actually classified you here as a kicktastic swinger. I think you're actually moving more towards a swinger style, which would actually suit your body type and build quite nicely. Somebody like Jodie Swallow would be in that same bracket. If you look at Jodie Swallow, she's a very high stroke rate swimmer, but she still maintains a very strong 6-beat leg kick, which is a bit unusual for a pure swinger. Pure swingers are more 2-beat.
So what is that 6 or 2?
Yeah, 6-beat. 6-beat, yeah, definitely 6-beat. It's just a continuous tick, 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 tapping away at the back of the stroke there.
What did you say the rate?
Your rate on that was 65 strokes per minute. 65. So I think the big thing is. Did we show you that angle? Hang on a second. Here we go, from the top as well. Bit of a crossover as well, look. So I'm sort of saying that your left shoulder might be compromised because it's a bit thumb first, and it's a bit sort of maybe a bit strained to be the classic high elbow, but also from this above water shot, you can also see how that left arm wraps around in front of the head there as well. So I think your stroke is in need of just a bit of a general tune up. There's no major bad faults within it. We need to take that right arm maybe out a little bit wider. We need to balance out the symmetry a little bit between left and right sides. Again, if you want to argue that point a little bit, we could say, well, look at Harry Wiltshire, look at Alistair Brownlee, look at Johnny Brownlee. When they swim, all of them, when they're racing, only breathe to the left-hand side, and they're quite asymmetrical within their strokes. So asymmetry, don't look at asymmetry always and think it's definitely a bad thing. But then have a look at how it's maybe affecting the stroke. And
Because I was having one-sided fall until 2 years ago.
oh, did you?
And
Okay.
I had this massive like pain everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
And so this whole balance.
You wanted to try and get it, yeah.
So I've always felt, you know, like you asked me to do things which is awkward.
Yes.
It's felt massively awkward. But
Yeah.
now it feels like normal.
Yes, yeah. So which side would you normally
So I was
used to? Always to the left-hand side, yeah.
to the left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I see it for bilateral breathing, a lot of people think I'm ultra pedantic about bilateral breathing. Some swimmers with very, very slow stroke rates struggle to breathe bilaterally purely because the stroke rate is so low that the frequency of breath in is a bit of an inhibitor. I think of bilateral breathing very much as like a drill. Okay, so I like a lot of my swimmers for 80% of their sessions to be breathing bilaterally, but there are many times in the open water where single-sided breathing is much more effective. Swimming across the Rottnest, for example, the waves and swell were hitting us from the left-hand side. In your scenario, that would be an absolute disaster if you could only breathe to the left-hand side. That's what happened with a lot of people. A lot of people then taking on water, becoming very sick because of it, and not so good at all. Equally, my favourite side to breathe to is my right-hand side. So when I swam across the English Channel in 2011, we had a horrendous day. It was between 28 and 35 knots from the southwest, which is sort of hitting you. If I'm swimming, use me as a bottle here. If I'm swimming here, it's sort of coming at me from this direction. Now, what the boat said they were going to do is they were going to sort of shield me by coming here. And I thought, great, I get to do most of my breathing to my right-hand side, to my favourite side. So it was blocking me. And the reason I had to breathe to the right was because I had to keep an eye on the boat and try to stay close to them. The problem was, after about 2.5, 3 hours in the water, my left shoulder really started to blow out. So I asked the boat, Adam was on the boat, I said, can I come round onto this side? And he said, that's crazy. Like, it's blowing an absolute gale out here. You can't come and swim. I said, unless I come on this side and do some more breathing to my left, I'm going to really struggle with my shoulder. I'm not going to be able to get across to France. So I went around and did that. And you could say, well, why didn't you just do a little bit more breathing to the left on that side? Because it was so rough and the waves were coming up from this side, every time I breathed to the left, I'd end up literally about 50 metres away from the boat. So it's very much a tactical thing. So if you make somebody very, very versatile with the swimming, breathe right, breathe left, only breathe right, only breathe left, or bilateral when needs be to balance things out, I think that's the ideal scenario, really.
The one thing on my mind, I think I just have to leave it alone really, is when I did Olympic distance, I mean, I've never got back to the speed I could swim for Olympic distance, but I'd say, you know, my Ironman times, which is now what I'm training,
Yeah.
absolutely great, well, good for those who
Yeah,
need to be.
sure.
But I think when I was breathing one-sided, I was capable of going much faster, and I didn't know whether I should explore it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely explore it. Don't be afraid, like I mentioned with Roy, don't be afraid to explore it on the non-dominant side as well. So I had a guy, have you heard of Joel Jameson?
Yeah.
So Joel came over to Perth last year, and 2 years ago, sorry, and spent about 4 months with him and his wife, Kat. Kat's an amazing swimmer. The fastest swimmer we've ever had in the squad. She'd have a CSS of about 112, 113 per 100. Fantastic. Joel, on the other hand, was coming over because his swimming times were around about 58, 59 minutes for the Ironman distance. He wanted to come over and he said, I want to improve my swimming. So I video analysed him. He could only breathe to one side. I said, well, maybe consider a bit of bilateral. So I can't breathe bilaterally. I'm running out of steam. I need to get that air in my system. I said, let's have a go breathing to the other side. It's too hard to change. I'm an old dog. Can't teach me new tricks. Surely there's something else you can give me. So I sort of humoured him a little bit, gave him some other stuff to work on. But I always kept coming back to the idea that if he could breathe better to the other side, then he might actually swim a little bit better. But he was so resistant to, and he won't mind me telling this story, he's so resistant to doing it. 2 weeks before he was due to fly home, he had a session where he completely blew up during the session. I said, look, session's over, you might as well, you're probably thinking to yourself, get out. Don't get out, do these 3 100s, just breathe to the other side for me. I'm not going to worry about time, just breathe to the other side. Anyway, he's suddenly swimming 3 or 4 seconds per 100 metres quicker, breathing to his least favourite side. I said, how did that feel? He said, it felt bloody awful. I said, he's swimming 3 or 4 seconds quicker. I said, oh, really? So that's what I told you 12 weeks ago, but you were so hesitant to actually try and change it. So the next morning we went into the river and actually on a timed 3.8k circuit, I said, look, I don't care how long it takes us, but you're going to do this all breathing to your right-hand side. And he swam 52.5 minutes that morning, swimming side by side. Normally, he would actually be on the feet trying to hang on and getting dropped very, very quickly. Swimming side by side, breathing, not even drafting, but just swimming side by side, breathing to his least favourite side there. So don't rule out the prospect of least favourite side. If you've got that argument in your head that I can get more air in, so therefore I'm more aerobic and have a little try breathing to your non-favourite side and see what that does. Yeah.
Actually think about it, probably in a race situation do go to left. I've always thought, well, training equally would be better for not breaking down.
Absolutely, 80% of the time, 80% rule sort of thing, bilateral breathing. But yeah, so just watch out for that. And Joel, he was shocked by that, but he's gone away and his swimming's taken a little bit of a downturn again. He emailed me saying, "What do you think I should work on?" I said, "He's still breathing to the right hand side." "No, it's too hard to maintain." And I said, "Well, get that." I said, "I'm not going to give you any more advice other than do it because we know it works."
50, 100s of breathe one side,
Yeah.
the other, breathe bilateral.
Absolutely, yeah. So there we go. Alrighty.